They spent cycles preparing for hostile aliens, tactical standoffs, and cosmic threats. But when the Harmony's voice finally made contact, the human's first word wasn't a warning or a challenge, it was hello. And in that single casual greeting, centuries of protocol shattered instantly. The Zaharian advance continues its methodical progression across star systems. Their ships move with a coordination that appears almost pre-programmed, each maneuver executed without hesitation or deviation. Combat formations shift in perfect unison, like a single organism responding to threats with instantaneous adaptability. This precision extends to their weapon systems, which reconfigure themselves between engagements to counter specific defense patterns observed in previous battles. Tactical reports from fallen systems describe energy shields that evolve in real time. A frequency that penetrates their defenses in one engagement becomes useless minutes later. The very physics of energy projection seem to bend to the Zaharians' adaptive technologies. Fleet commanders watch their most sophisticated attacks dissolve against shields that learn from each encounter, becoming stronger and more specialized against their specific offensive capabilities. Morale among the defending forces fractures under this relentless pressure. Commanders who once spoke with confidence now hesitate before giving orders, knowing their strategies will be anticipated and neutralized. Soldiers fight with growing dread, aware that each tactical innovation they develop gives the enemy new data to incorporate into its ever-evolving combat algorithms. The psychological toll becomes as devastating as the military losses. Worlds fall in rapid succession, each conquest happening faster than the last. Evacuation ships barely clear atmosphere before planetary defenses collapse. There's no time for mourning ceremonies or strategic reassessments between engagements. The constant pressure creates a cycle where each defeat makes the next one more inevitable. As the Zaharians incorporate fresh combat data into their already formidable tactical database, traditional military doctrine becomes completely useless against this adaptive opponent. Flanking maneuvers are anticipated before they're fully executed. Ambush positions are detected through patterns the human mind can't perceive. Siege strategies are countered by logistical responses that shouldn't be possible at such speeds. The very concept of military experience becomes obsolete when facing an enemy that learns faster than any living commander. Council members watch security feeds from the front lines with growing disbelief. Defense platforms that took decades to develop and construct are dismantled in hours. Planetary shield networks that were designed to withstand years of bombardment fail after analyzing just a few attack patterns. The technological gap isn't merely quantitative. It represents a fundamental difference in how warfare is conceptualized and executed. Field transmissions describe Zaharian forces that operate without apparent emotion or self-preservation instincts. Their soldiers advance through withering fire without breaking formation. Their pilots execute maneuvers that should be physically impossible, sustained by reaction times that suggest some form of machine enhancement. They fight with the cold efficiency of surgical instruments rather than living beings. This isn't a war of attrition or territory gain. The Zaharians don't occupy worlds so much as systematically dismantle them. Industrial centers are precisely targeted first, then transportation networks, then communication hubs. Each conquest follows the same pattern of methodical deconstruction, leaving planetary societies fractured beyond any capacity to regroup or resist. The realization slowly dawns on military planners that conventional victory is impossible. Every new ship launched, every new weapon deployed, only makes the enemy stronger by providing more data to analyze and counter. The very act of fighting accelerates their own defeat. Traditional military thinking has reached its absolute limit against this unprecedented threat. After 4 months of continuous losses, the strategic picture becomes unbearably clear. 12 inhabited systems have fallen, each containing billions of lives and centuries of civilization. The rate of advance shows no sign of slowing. Projections indicate total galactic conquest within another 6 months unless something fundamentally changes the equation of this conflict. The council chamber on Velith Prime stands silent as Ambassador Kethra activates the holographic display. 12 star systems glow crimson on the galactic map, each representing a complete loss of life and territory. The air feels heavy with the weight of those billions of souls. Council members avoid looking directly at the map, as if the red light might burn their eyes. General Voxar slams his fist on the polished table. His voice echoes through the chamber as he demands immediate construction of 3 new battle fleets. He argues for heavier weapons, stronger shields, more of everything that has already failed them. His rhetoric follows familiar patterns, the same logic that has led to 12 consecutive defeats. The general's uniform seems to tighten around him as he speaks, every thread straining with his conviction. Dr. Eshaw rises slowly, her scientific robes flowing around her like calm water. She speaks without raising her voice, each word measured and precise. She reminds the council that building more of what hasn't worked is the definition of failure. Her analysis shows the Zaharians adapt to new technology within hours, making each new weapon obsolete before it reaches the front lines. She presents data streams showing adaptation rates increasing with each engagement. The argument that follows is both passionate and hopeless. Military advisors support Voxar while scientists back Wyshaw's position. The divide isn't merely tactical. It represents a fundamental conflict between tradition and innovation. Voices rise, then fall as each speaker realizes their position has already been defeated by circumstances. The debate circles back to the same impossible choices. Fear becomes a physical presence in the room. Council members glance at the chronometer, knowing each passing minute brings the Zaharians closer to their home system. They can almost feel the vibration of advancing warships through the floor. The weight of their civilization's survival presses down on every decision. Some members sit perfectly still, afraid any movement might betray their panic. Time becomes the enemy they cannot fight. Evacuation plans would take months to execute properly. Defense preparations require resources they no longer possess. Each council member calculates the same grim equation: certain destruction against an unknowable risk. The choice isn't between good and bad options, but between terrible and potentially catastrophic ones. The discussion turns to historical precedents, ancient texts, and forbidden options. Someone mentions the Deep Space Protocol in hushed tones. The phrase hangs in the air like a dangerous scent. Council members exchange glances that mix horror with desperate curiosity. They know the protocol represents everything their civilization has feared for generations. General Voxar opposes the idea immediately. He calls it an invitation to greater threats, a gamble with the devil they don't know. Dr. Eshaw counters that the devil they do know is already at their doorstep. Her calm analysis cuts through the emotional arguments. She presents the protocol not as a choice, but as the only remaining option. The vote happens without formal procedure. No buttons are pressed, no official tally recorded. One by one, council members simply nod their assent. The silence that follows feels heavier than any defeat. They have chosen to break their most sacred prohibition, to risk inviting something even more dangerous than their current enemy. In that quiet moment, they understand they've crossed a threshold. The decision cannot be unmade. They've chosen potential annihilation over certain defeat. The chamber's lights seem to dim as they contemplate what they've unleashed. Hope feels like a dangerous concept now, something that might kill them faster than despair. The Deep Space Protocol emerges from history like a ghost from a forgotten war. Created 11 centuries ago during the first expansion era, it represents a moment of profound vulnerability for their civilization. The original architects designed it during a period of existential fear, when their scouts kept encountering ruins of species that had simply vanished from the galaxy. They built the protocol as a final option, a desperate shout into the darkness when all other hopes had died. Its mechanics remain partially mysterious even to the Council's top scientists. The system doesn't use conventional communication arrays or standard FTL transmission methods. Instead, it employs gravitational harmonics and quantum-entangled particles to send its signal through dimensions most species cannot perceive. The technology predates their current understanding of physics, built by ancestors who apparently knew secrets that later generations lost. No records exist of anyone ever answering the call. The protocol was tested once, 500 years ago, according to fragmented historical documents. Those records mention only that the silence that followed was more terrifying than any response. Since that test, the system remained dormant, its existence known only to the highest council members and a handful of historians. Most considered it a mythological artifact, rather than functional technology. Councillor Vreen argues against activation with visible distress. He cites ancient texts warning that the protocol might attract attention from beyond the veil. His hands tremble as he describes historical accounts of civilizations that meddled with forces they couldn't control. He believes the Zaharians, however terrible, represent a known quantity, Whatever answers the protocol might bring could make their current situation seem like a minor border conflict. Ambassador Kethra counters with cold logic. She points out that extinction leaves no options for regret. If they don't activate the protocol, the Zaharians will systematically dismantle their civilization within months. Whatever risks the protocol carries, they pale against the certainty of total annihilation. Her voice remains steady as she presents the mathematical certainty of their defeat without intervention. The debate occupies less than 10 minutes of council time. There are no long speeches or elaborate arguments. The discussion focuses on practical considerations: how to activate the system, what message to send, what safeguards to implement. Fear of the Zaharians outweighs fear of the unknown. Desperation creates a strange clarity that cuts through normal bureaucratic hesitation. Technical teams activate systems that haven't been powered in centuries. Ancient consoles flare to life with interfaces that no living engineer fully understands. The language used in the control systems differs from modern technical standards, employing symbolic logic and visual metaphors that confuse contemporary scientists. They work mostly through trial and error, guided by fragmentary activation sequences preserved in sealed historical archives. The message itself becomes a subject of intense discussion. They decide to transmit raw sensor data from Zaharian attacks, rather than a composed plea for help. The thinking is simple. Let any receiving civilization see exactly what they're facing. They include tactical analyses, shield frequency logs, and weapon performance metrics. The transmission represents a complete intelligence dump of their failed war effort. Safeguards are minimal and largely symbolic. They program the system to shut down after 24 hours regardless of response. The transmission will follow a randomized path through multiple relay points, making backtracking difficult. These measures provide psychological comfort rather than actual security against any civilization advanced enough to receive the signal. In the first place, the final activation requires 3 council members to simultaneously press physical buttons on 3 separate consoles. The design emphasizes the gravity of the decision. Their hands move almost reluctantly, the weight of centuries of caution pressing against their fingers. The buttons depress with a satisfying mechanical click that echoes through the silent chamber. Deep beneath the council complex, machinery begins to hum. The sound starts as a barely perceptible vibration through the floor plates. It grows steadily, resonating through the building's foundation. Lights flicker across control panels that haven't illuminated in 500 years. Energy readings spike on monitors, showing power flows that defy contemporary measurement standards. The transmission begins not as a focused beam, but as an omnidirectional pulse. It expands outward at speeds that shouldn't be possible, bypassing normal space-time constraints. Sensors show it moving through dimensions they can measure but not comprehend. The Council watches the main display as their desperate message travels into the unknown, carrying their fate to whatever might be listening. The transmission array awakens with a deep, resonant hum that vibrates through the very bedrock of Velith Prime. This isn't the clean electronic sound of modern technology, but something older, more mechanical. The massive dish structures begin their rotation, moving with the slow, deliberate motion of ancient machinery stirring from centuries of sleep. Gears grind against accumulated dust. Energy conduits glow with a light spectrum. Modern instruments struggle to classify. Energy flows through circuits that haven't carried current in over 500 years. The activation sequence follows pathways that contemporary engineers can't fully map. The system draws power directly from the planetary core, bypassing all modern distribution networks. Control panels display readings in measurement units nobody living recognizes. Technicians watch ancient dials and analog displays that predate digital technology by 1,000 years. The signal begins its journey as a complex multi-spectrum burst. It carries compressed data packets containing every known detail about the Zaharian threat: tactical assessments, shield frequency analyses, weapon performance metrics. It includes raw sensor footage of planets falling, cities burning, fleets dissolving against adaptive defenses. The transmission represents a complete intelligence dump of their civilization's failure. Council members watch the main display in absolute silence. Their faces show the same mixture of hope and terror. They've just invited complete strangers into their war. They have no idea what might answer their call. Some stare at their hands as if already regretting the button presses. Others watch the transmission counters with desperate intensity. The signal moves through space using principles they don't understand. It doesn't follow conventional light speed limitations or standard FTL corridors. Sensors show it bending through dimensions their science hasn't mapped. The transmission appears to skip across space-time like a stone across water. Each jump covers distances that would take their fastest ships years to cross. There's no turning back now. The transmission can't be recalled or canceled once initiated. The ancient system operates on its own internal logic, following programming nobody living can modify. They've unleashed something that will either save them or destroy them faster than the Zaharians ever could. The decision hangs in the air like a suspended verdict. What receives this signal remains the terrifying unknown. The transmission radiates outward in all directions, reaching into regions of space their scouts never explored. It might encounter civilizations far more advanced than their own. It might find nothing but empty systems and dead worlds. The signal could travel for centuries without finding anyone who can help, or anyone who would want to. The gamble represents their civilization's final move. They've played their last card against an enemy that adapts to every conventional strategy. This isn't a tactical adjustment or a new weapon system. It's a fundamental break from everything they know about warfare and diplomacy. They've chosen the unknown over certain defeat. Each council member privately wonders what they've unleashed. Some imagine benevolent, advanced civilizations coming to their aid. Others picture predators attracted by signs of weakness. The uncertainty becomes its own form of torture. They watch the transmission counters climb, each number representing distance from safety. The signal crosses into unexplored territory within hours. It passes through nebulas their ships have never mapped, around black holes their navigation systems avoid. It moves through regions where conventional physics seems to break down. The transmission becomes a lone traveler on a journey nobody could have anticipated. Belith Prime's desperate plea begins an odyssey that will redefine their place in the galaxy. The signal carries not just tactical data but the essence of their civilization's fear and hope. It moves toward whatever lies in the dark between stars, carrying the fate of billions to whatever might be listening. The waiting begins. The message arrived during lunar night. Captain Jake Morrison watched it scroll across his screen at Armstrong Outpost, the translated text glowing against the blackness of the observation window. The words described systems falling, defenses failing, civilizations ending. He recognized the patterns immediately, not the alien nature of the senders, but the desperation in their transmission. This was a people fighting for their existence against something that learned faster than they could adapt. Morrison's hands moved before his mind fully processed the implications. He routed the message to Earth Command with maximum priority tags. Alerts flashed across multiple monitors. Within minutes, the response team activated, pulling specialists from sleep shifts and research projects. Nobody questioned the authenticity. The data patterns were too consistent, the tactical details too precise. This wasn't a drill or a false positive. The team gathered in the situation room beneath the lunar surface. Scientists, military planners, diplomats, all watching the same devastating footage of energy weapons dismantling planetary defenses. They saw ships moving with impossible coordination, shields adapting in real time. The room stayed quiet except for the hum of life support and the soft click of keyboards. Morrison broke the silence. He didn't talk about first contact protocols or interstellar politics. He spoke about the basic principle that had guided humanity through centuries of crisis. When someone asked for help, you help them. The simplicity of the statement cut through the complexity of the situation. There were no debates about risks or rewards. The decision felt inevitable somehow. Preparation began immediately. They analyzed transmission vectors, calculated travel times, assessed resource requirements. The plan took shape not as a formal proposal, but as a series of necessary actions. Engineers started modifying the UEE as defiance while linguists worked on communication protocols. Medical teams prepared for unknown biological environments. Every specialist focused on practical problems rather than philosophical questions. The risks were enormous and mostly unknown. They might arrive to find everyone already dead. They might encounter hostile forces that made the described threat seem minor. Their technology might prove useless against advanced alien systems. The Defiance could become trapped in a war they couldn't understand, let alone influence. Nobody pretended these concerns weren't real. Morrison coordinated the effort with calm precision. He'd served in conflict zones across Earth and Mars, but this felt different. This wasn't about national interests or resource disputes. This was about answering a cry for help from strangers in the dark. He moved through the preparation stages with focused intensity, making decisions quickly but without haste. Earth's various governments approved the mission with surprising unity. The normal bureaucratic delays and political calculations didn't apply here. Something about the raw desperation in the alien transmission cut through normal protocols. Approval came with minimal debate and maximum support. Resources flowed to the project without the usual budget arguments. The Defiance's crew received their assignments with quiet determination. They understood the stakes better than anyone. Their training shifted from theoretical first contact scenarios to practical combat preparation. They studied the transmitted data, looking for weaknesses in the adaptive enemy, searching for any advantage they might bring to the conflict. Final preparations happened against the backdrop of the continuing transmission. New data kept arriving, showing more systems falling, more defeats. The urgency became a physical presence in the preparation rooms. Every hour counted. Every delay meant more lives lost. The team worked without rest, driven by the knowledge that someone needed their help. Earth's decision marked a fundamental shift in human history. For centuries, they'd looked outward with curiosity and caution. Now they moved with purpose toward a specific point in space where someone needed assistance. The Defiance represented not just a ship, but a statement about humanity's place in the cosmos. They were going to help. The ship prepared for departure in its lunar docking bay. Morrison watched the final loading operations through the observation window. He felt the weight of the decision, but no doubt about its necessity. They were stepping into the unknown because someone had asked for help. The simplicity of that motive felt right somehow. The Defiance's engines began their startup sequence. Morrison selected Commander Ryan Stone without hesitation. They'd served together during the Martian secession crisis, where Stone's calm under fire had saved 3 transports full of civilians. Stone understood mission parameters without needing everything spelled out. His file showed 19 successful combat engagements and 0 disciplinary actions. He moved through the ship with quiet efficiency, checking systems and crew readiness without unnecessary conversation. Chief Engineer Paula Martinez came from the orbital shipyards around Jupiter. She'd kept experimental engines running through radiation storms and combat damage. Her hands knew the Defiance's systems better than the schematics showed. She could diagnose power fluctuations by the sound they made through the hull. Martinez believed every machine had personality and peculiarities. She talked to the ship's systems like old friends, coaxing performance from them that design specs said shouldn't be possible. Dr. Alex Turner represented the scientific contingent. He'd written the standard text on xenobiology and first contact medicine. His research on adaptive immune responses had saved countless lives during the Europa outbreak. Turner approached alien biology with respectful curiosity rather than fear. He packed medical kits with supplies for unknown physiologies and prepared quarantine protocols for scenarios they hadn't imagined yet. His calm demeanor hid a mind that could process catastrophic information without panic. Lieutenant Kelly Walsh handled communications and language analysis. She'd cracked 7 alien language systems during her career, each more complex than the last. Walsh believed language revealed how a species thought, not just what they said. She studied the Valeth transmission patterns, looking for cognitive frameworks hidden beneath the translated words. Her workstations showed multiple linguistic trees mapping possible communication pathways with unknown species. The crew shared a practical approach to problem solving. They'd all served in crisis situations where standard procedures failed. Martinez had rebuilt engine components from scrap during a long-range patrol. Stone had negotiated ceasefires without command authorization when communications failed. Turner had developed field treatments using limited medical supplies. Walsh had established communication protocols with species that didn't use verbal language. Morrison stressed their mission parameters during the final briefing. They weren't going to conquer or occupy. They were going to help. The distinction mattered for rules of engagement and tactical planning. Their weapon systems were configured for defense and precision strikes, rather than overwhelming force. Medical bays were expanded while troop compartments remained minimal. The ship carried more engineering and scientific equipment than ammunition. Each crew member understood the balance they needed to maintain. Help required understanding before action. Assistance demanded listening before proposing solutions. They prepared for scenarios where their help might be refused or misunderstood. Cultural contamination protocols became as important as biological quarantine measures. They studied what little they knew about Velith society, while acknowledging their information was incomplete and potentially biased. The Defiance itself reflected their mission priorities. Redundant systems allowed for damage control during extended operations. Modular compartments could be reconfigured for medical care, engineering projects, or scientific research. The ship carried fabricators that could produce tools and components from local resources. Its design emphasized adaptability over specialization, endurance over speed. Martinez had personally overseen the final refit. She'd insisted on physical backup systems for all critical functions. Her engineers installed manual overrides for automated controls. She wanted systems that would keep working when technology failed. The ship could operate with multiple systems damaged or offline. This philosophy extended throughout the vessel's design. The crew completed their final checks with methodical precision. They tested communication arrays, medical facilities, and engineering systems. Each department reported readiness without embellishment or hesitation. They understood the journey would take them beyond any previous human exploration. They were traveling toward a war they didn't start, to help people they'd never met. Morrison watched his team prepare with quiet satisfaction. They represented humanity's best qualities: competence without arrogance, courage without recklessness. They approached the unknown with respect rather than fear. The Defiance hummed around them, a ship built for endurance and adaptation. Its systems were designed to improvise solutions to problems nobody had anticipated. The crew shared this capability, this willingness to face the unknown with skill and determination. The Defiance's journey through uncharted space revealed cosmic structures humanity had only theorized. Nebulas glowed with energy signatures that defied classification. Star systems followed orbital patterns that shouldn't exist according to known physics. The ship's sensors recorded phenomena that would keep scientists busy for decades. Every light-year traveled showed them something new and unexplained. Dr. Lisa Park noticed the patterns first. She spent hours studying the Velith mathematical constructs embedded in their transmission. The numbers followed familiar physical laws, but arranged themselves in ways that made no sense to human cognition. Equations balanced through methods that seemed to defy computational logic. The underlying physics were universal, but the mental frameworks were alien. The differences went deeper than mere notation. The Velith communication suggested a species that perceived time differently. Their strategic planning incorporated multiple potential timelines simultaneously. They didn't plan for contingencies. They planned across divergent futures as if all were equally real. This explained their rapid adaptation to changing circumstances, but also revealed a potential limitation. Earth's engineers and linguists converged on a crucial insight. They realized the Velith technology was formidable in static defense but struggled with true innovation. Their systems could adapt to known threats with incredible speed but couldn't invent completely new solutions. The enemy's learning was algorithmic rather than creative. They optimized existing patterns rather than creating new ones. Martinez saw the engineering implications immediately. She noted how Velith shields adapted to energy weapons, but showed no capacity for dealing with physical projectiles. Their systems were designed for a specific type of warfare and couldn't shift paradigms. This suggested a civilization that perfected, rather than innovated. They made existing systems better but rarely created truly new ones. Walsh's linguistic analysis supported this finding. The Velith language contained elaborate structures for describing variations and modifications, but limited vocabulary for fundamental change. Their cognitive framework seemed to value refinement over revolution. This explained why they were losing. To an enemy that kept introducing completely new combat paradigms, Turner considered the biological implications. He theorized that species evolving in stable environments might develop different problem-solving approaches. Creatures from volatile worlds would need improvisation skills, while those from calm environments could specialize in optimization. The theory fit the data patterns they were observing across multiple disciplines. Morrison absorbed these findings during the daily briefings. He saw the strategic picture forming. Humanity's chaotic history might give them an advantage in this conflict. Their ability to improvise and invent could counter the enemy's perfect adaptation. They might bring something to this war that neither side possessed: true creative unpredictability. The realization changed their preparation approach. They stopped trying to match the technological sophistication described in the transmissions. Instead, they focused on developing simple, robust solutions that could be modified quickly. Martinez had her team designing modular systems that could be reconfigured during combat. Stone drilled his security teams in improvisational tactics rather than set procedures. The journey provided constant reminders of cosmic scale. They passed star systems where civilizations might have risen and fallen without anyone knowing. They saw evidence of cosmic events that could wipe out entire sectors without warning. The vastness of space made their mission feel both insignificant and desperately important. Each discovery reinforced their unique position. They weren't just bringing additional forces to a balanced conflict. They were introducing a completely new variable into a stalemated equation. Their value wouldn't be in matching existing capabilities, but in adding something entirely different to the strategic landscape. The Defiance continued its journey with renewed purpose. They understood now what made humanity potentially valuable to the Velith cause. Their Death World heritage had forged a capacity for chaos that neither side in this conflict possessed. They carried the ability to break patterns that everyone else considered unbreakable. Humanity realized they could turn their chaotic nature into a strategic advantage. The Defiance dropped from FTL space with a shudder that ran through the entire hull. Before them floated a fleet of ships that defied human design principles. Their surfaces shimmered with crystalline structures that caught starlight and fractured it into rainbows. The vessels moved with a slow, deliberate grace that suggested either extreme confidence or completely different physics. Morrison watched them on the main display, noting how they held formation with perfect precision. Ambassador Kethra arrived aboard the Defiance without ceremony. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her body composed of what appeared to be living crystal that refracted light from within. She moved with a liquid smoothness that made human motion seem clumsy by comparison. Her voice emerged from a translation device as a calm, measured tone that carried no emotional emphasis. She greeted Morrison with a slight inclination of her head that might have been respect or mere curiosity. Morrison introduced his crew with formal precision. He used standard military titles and avoided any attempt at familiarity. His tone remained neutral, his posture relaxed, but alert. He watched the ambassador's reactions, looking for any sign of hostility or deception. The crew followed his lead, offering brief nods without extending hands or making physical contact. Kethra's curiosity focused immediately on Earth's environment. She asked about atmospheric composition, temperature ranges, geological stability. Her questions revealed a perspective where environmental perfection represented the highest ideal. She seemed particularly interested in natural disasters, seasonal variations, and biological diversity. Each answer made her crystalline form shift slightly, patterns of light moving differently beneath her surface. The contrast became increasingly apparent. The Alterans valued order, predictability, and controlled environments. Their ships maintained perfect climate conditions. Their society apparently eliminated random variables wherever possible. They saw chaos as something to be managed and minimized. Their approach to problem-solving involved creating systems that prevented unexpected outcomes. Humanity's history told a different story. Earth embraced volatility as a necessary condition for growth and adaptation. Their technology often worked with natural systems rather than against them. They accepted that some variables couldn't be controlled, only prepared for. This fundamental difference in worldview represented the real challenge of first contact. The fragile alliance faced more than language barriers. They needed to understand how each species thought about risk, innovation, and change. The Alterans approached warfare as an engineering problem to be solved through better systems. Humanity saw it as a dynamic contest requiring constant adaptation. Neither approach was inherently superior, but they clashed at philosophical levels. Kethra's questions grew more specific. She wanted to know how humans made decisions under pressure. She asked about military command structures and emergency protocols. Her interest seemed clinical rather than strategic. As if studying a fascinating specimen, She noted how human responses emphasized flexibility over procedure. Morrison responded with careful honesty. He explained Earth's preference for decentralized decision-making. He described how junior officers could modify orders based on changing circumstances. This concept seemed to both concern and fascinate the ambassador. Her people apparently valued strict hierarchy and clear chains of command. The first contact meeting stretched for hours without reaching substantive military discussions. Both sides recognized they needed to understand each other's basic operating principles before planning joint operations. The cultural gap was wider than the technological one. They had to learn to think together before they could fight together. As the meeting concluded, the fundamental difference became clear. The Alterans were products of an ordered civilization that sought perfection. Humans were survivors of a dangerous world that valued adaptability. This distinction would define their alliance and their strategy against the common enemy. They had to find ways to make these opposing strengths complement each other rather than clash. The Defiance crew returned to their stations with new understanding. They recognized that their value to the Alterans wasn't just military. They represented a different way of approaching problems, a different relationship with uncertainty and risk. Their Deathworld heritage gave them tools the Alterans lacked, just as the Alterans' stability offered resources humanity needed. Ambassador Kathra described Zephyria with evident pride. Her homeworld maintained perfect environmental conditions through planetary-scale climate regulation. Ecosystems functioned with mathematical precision. Seasons followed predictable patterns and natural disasters were engineered out of existence. The Alterans had created a civilization where surprise itself seemed to be a controlled variable. Their cities gleamed with ordered beauty. Their technology hummed with reliable consistency. It was a world where everything had its place and purpose. Morrison responded with equal candor about Earth. He described a planet where tectonic plates shifted without warning, where atmosphere could turn violent in minutes, where temperatures swung between lethal extremes. He spoke of predators that evolved alongside humans, diseases that constantly adapted, and environments that demanded constant vigilance. Earth wasn't a garden to be cultivated, but a challenge to be survived. His description carried no apology, only factual clarity. The tension in the room shifted as Morrison continued. He wasn't defending humanity's world so much as explaining its consequences. Survival on Earth required accepting chaos as a fundamental condition. It demanded improvisation over procedure, adaptation over perfection. Humans learned to expect the unexpected because their environment never offered guarantees. This mindset shaped their approach to every challenge, including warfare. Human history supported his claims. Civilizations rose and fell according to their ability to handle disruption. Societies that embraced flexibility survived while rigid ones collapsed. Their technological progress came from solving immediate problems with available resources. They valued practical solutions over elegant theories. This approach created a culture that could pivot quickly when circumstances changed. Warfare reflected these environmental influences. Human military doctrine emphasized initiative at all levels. Junior officers could modify orders based on battlefield conditions. Soldiers learned to operate with damaged equipment and limited supplies. Their training included scenarios where everything went wrong simultaneously. They practiced fighting exhausted, outnumbered, and outgunned because reality often delivered those conditions. The contrast with Alteran warfare became increasingly clear. The aliens followed precise tactical doctrines with minimal deviation. Their ships moved in perfect formation. Their attacks followed calculated patterns. They valued coordinated action over individual initiative. This approach worked against predictable enemies but failed against adaptive opponents. Their strength became their weakness when facing unpredictable threats. Environmental pressure forged unexpected strengths. Humans developed strong group cohesion under stress. They learned to trust each other's improvisations because survival demanded it. Creative problem-solving became a collective skill rather than an individual talent. Their societies valued resilience as highly as intelligence. They built systems that could fail gracefully and recover quickly. Alteran leadership began reconsidering their assumptions. They saw how their civilized approach to warfare had become a liability against an adaptive enemy. Perfect formations meant perfect predictability. Methodical planning created patterns that could be anticipated and countered. Their technological superiority meant nothing against an opponent that learned faster than they could innovate. The strategic implications became unavoidable. Humanity's Death World heritage offered something neither side possessed: the ability to thrive in chaos. Their comfort with uncertainty could counter the enemy's perfect adaptation. Their improvisational skills might break patterns that seemed unbreakable. What seemed like a disadvantage became their greatest strategic asset. Morrison's explanation changed the conversation entirely. The Alterans stopped seeing humans as primitive allies and started viewing them as strategic partners. Their different approaches complemented each other perfectly. Together they might develop strategies that combined Alteran precision with human adaptability. The Death World mindset became their secret weapon. Earth's analysis revealed the Zaharian Empire functioned as a single coordinated organism. Their military operations showed perfect synchronization across light years of space. Every ship moved with the same tactical awareness. Every soldier reacted with identical timing. This unity came from centralized command networks linking all combat units through neural implants. The system created a distributed intelligence that learned and adapted at incredible speeds. Battlefield data flowed through the network in constant streams. Each engagement provided new information that improved their combat algorithms. Shields adjusted frequencies between energy blasts. Weapons recalibrated targeting solutions during attacks. The system optimized itself in real time, becoming more effective with each exchange of fire. This allowed them to counter conventional tactics before opponents could adjust their own strategies. War became a logical optimization problem for the Zaharians. They treated combat as a mathematical exercise rather than a contest of wills. Their approach emphasized efficiency over tradition, data over intuition. This machine-like efficiency made them devastating against opponents who fought with emotion and established doctrine. They adapted while others planned, learned while others executed. Soldiers' networked minds processed information at speeds biology alone couldn't achieve. Neural implants converted sensory input into combat data instantly. Reactions happened faster than conscious thought could follow. This gave them tactical advantages that seemed supernatural to conventional forces. They anticipated moves before they were made, countered strategies before they were fully deployed. The system allowed them to outthink and outmaneuver traditional defenses. Fleet movements coordinated across solar systems with perfect timing. Attack patterns shifted seamlessly between engagements. Defensive formations adapted to new threats within seconds. No conventional military could match this level of coordinated adaptation. Previous opponents had fallen because they kept fighting the war they expected, rather than the war they faced. Morrison and Walsh identified the critical weakness in this perfect system. The constant communication required for coordination created a vulnerability. The network needed uninterrupted data flow to maintain its advantages. Any disruption to that flow would degrade their combat effectiveness. The very thing that made them strong also made them fragile in specific ways. The necessity of centralized control became their Achilles heel. Without constant data exchange, their synchronized movements would falter. Individual units might continue fighting, but they'd lose their coordinated advantage. The network required perfect communication to function at peak efficiency. Any interruption would force them to operate with reduced capabilities. Disruption and chaos could overload their data streams. The system was designed for orderly combat information, not random noise. Introducing unpredictable variables might create processing bottlenecks. Too much conflicting data could slow their adaptation rate. The network might struggle to prioritize information during chaotic engagements. This insight changed their strategic approach entirely. Victory wouldn't come from matching their technology or outplanning their algorithms. It would come from introducing elements they couldn't anticipate or process efficiently. The key lay in creating situations where their perfect system had to handle imperfect information. Unpredictability became their weapon of choice. They needed to fight in ways that didn't follow logical patterns. They had to create chaos that the system couldn't optimize against. This played directly into humanity's strengths developed through centuries of surviving volatile environments. Their comfort with uncertainty became a strategic asset. The analysis showed that perfect systems have perfect vulnerabilities. The Zaharian war machine was designed for a specific type of warfare. It expected opponents to follow reasonable tactical principles. It couldn't handle opponents who embraced irrational approaches. Their strength became their limitation when facing truly unpredictable opposition. Morrison understood what they needed to do. They wouldn't fight smarter or harder. They would fight stranger. They would create situations that defied logical analysis. They would weaponize chaos itself against an enemy that worshipped order. The plan began taking shape around this fundamental insight. The breakthrough came from studying how the Zaharians fought, rather than what they fought with. Their system depended on perfect information flow and predictable opposition. Disrupt that flow, introduce unpredictability, and their advantage would crumble. The plan took shape not as a single solution, but as a coordinated assault on their entire combat methodology. Martinez began with the ship systems themselves. She ordered her engineering teams to strip out sophisticated energy shielding components. In their place, they installed layered physical armor plates crafted from asteroid mining alloys. The material was dense, crude, and energy inefficient, but it didn't require complex frequency adjustments or power management. It simply absorbed impacts through mass and redundancy. The change reduced their technological profile dramatically. Weapons received similar treatment. Precision energy weapons gave way to mass driver systems firing solid projectiles. The targeting computers were reprogrammed for area saturation rather than pinpoint accuracy. They would fill space with high-velocity metal instead of trying to thread energy beams through adaptive shields. The ammunition was simple, cheap, and impossible to adapt against through frequency modulation. Martinez defended the changes against Zhu Yi from Altaran advisors. She argued that advanced systems created predictable patterns. Simple systems created chaotic outcomes. The enemy could adapt to perfect technology but couldn't optimize against improvisation. Sometimes the oldest solutions worked precisely because they lacked sophistication. Her teams worked around the clock implementing these retrofits across the Allied fleet. Walsh developed the digital component of the strategy. She created data viruses designed to inject chaos into the Zaharian command network. These weren't traditional malware seeking to destroy or take control. They flooded the network with meaningless signals, false sensor readings, and contradictory combat data. The goal was information overload rather than system compromise. The viruses operated on multiple levels. Some generated fake damage reports from Allied ships. Others created phantom sensor contacts where no ships existed. More sophisticated versions introduced timing errors into coordination signals. The digital assault aimed to degrade the enemy's perfect situational awareness. It turned their greatest strength into a vulnerability. Training shifted to match the new equipment. Pilots practiced flying erratic, unpredictable patterns. Gunners learned to fire without precise targeting solutions. Damage control teams drilled on patching physical breaches rather than recalibrating shield emitters. The entire approach embraced disorder as a tactical advantage. They were learning to fight in ways that defied logical analysis. The Altaran forces struggled with the new doctrine initially. Their pilots found the chaotic flight patterns uncomfortable. Their gunners disliked the imprecise targeting. Their command structure resisted the decentralized decision-making. But combat simulations showed dramatic improvements against Zaharian tactics. The evidence eventually overcame their cultural preferences. Integration became the next challenge. Human and Altaran ships needed to coordinate despite their different combat styles. They developed simple visual signals and basic radio codes that couldn't be easily corrupted. The communication methods felt primitive compared to their previous systems. But simplicity provided security against electronic warfare. The strategy represented a complete pivot from symmetrical warfare. They weren't trying to match the enemy's capabilities anymore. They were trying to create conditions where those capabilities became irrelevant. The plan leveraged human improvisation against machine perfection. It used chaos as a weapon against order. Final preparations focused on synchronization. The physical modifications, digital warfare, and new combat doctrines had to work together perfectly. They conducted joint exercises that looked nothing like traditional fleet maneuvers. Ships moved in apparently random patterns while filling space with kinetic projectiles and data noise. The chaos was carefully orchestrated. The strategy was ready for testing. They had transformed their approach based on a fundamental insight about their enemy's weakness. They were about to fight a battle that would look like madness to any traditional tactician. But madness might be exactly what was needed against an enemy that understood logic too well. Morrison stood before the mixed fleet commanders, his expression grim. The mission profile showed on screens around the briefing room. He described an ambush against a Zaharian patrol group, targeting their regular resupply route through the Hades cluster. The proposal broke every standard tactical doctrine. It relied on chaos, confusion, and unpredictable maneuvers. Several Alteran commanders objected immediately, calling the plan reckless and undisciplined. Morrison listened to their concerns without argument, then made his position clear. They weren't there to fight fair. They were there to win. The ambush site was a dense asteroid field where sensors became unreliable. The floating rocks ranged from pebble-sized to mountain-sized, all tumbling in unpredictable patterns. Navigation through such terrain required constant course corrections and created sensor ghosts. Perfect formation flying became impossible. The environment itself would help disrupt the enemy's coordinated movements. It was the perfect place to test their new chaotic approach to warfare. They positioned their ships behind larger asteroids, using the natural cover to mask their signatures. The modified human vessels sat beside sleek Alteran craft, creating a mixed force that looked nothing like a standard battle group. Martinez had tuned their engines for rapid, erratic bursts rather than smooth acceleration. The ships could change direction faster than any sane pilot would normally attempt. They waited in silence, watching their sensors for the first sign of the patrol. The Zaharian ships entered the asteroid field with their usual precision. They moved in perfect formation, their paths calculated to avoid the largest obstacles. Their sensors scanned ahead, mapping safe passage through the chaotic environment. They showed no awareness of the waiting ambush until the first kinetic projectiles struck. The attack began without warning. Mass drivers fired clouds of metal fragments from concealed positions. The projectiles weren't aimed with precision. They filled entire sectors of space with high-velocity metal. Zaharian shields flared as they adapted to the physical impacts, but the sheer volume of fire overwhelmed their adjustment systems. Shield frequencies flickered as they tried to find optimal configurations. Walsh's data viruses activated simultaneously. The Zaharian command network flooded with false sensor readings and contradictory combat data. Phantom ships appeared on their displays. Damage reports from perfectly healthy vessels flashed across their systems. Coordination signals developed timing errors that disrupted their formation movements. The perfect synchronization began to fracture under the information assault. The Allied ships emerged from hiding with erratic maneuvers that defied tactical prediction. They didn't follow attack patterns or standard engagement protocols. Human pilots flew like they were avoiding obstacles in atmosphere rather than fighting in open space. Alteran ships, after initial hesitation, began adopting similar unpredictable movements. The combined fleet became a chaotic swarm rather than an organized force. Zaharian return fire proved increasingly ineffective. Their targeting systems couldn't lock onto ships that changed vectors randomly. Energy beams that should have found their mark sliced through empty space. The adaptive weapons kept recalibrating for targets that no longer occupied predicted positions. The enemy's technological advantage evaporated in the face of pure unpredictability. Morrison watched the battle unfold from the Defiance's bridge. His crew coordinated the chaos with calm precision. They didn't try to control the entire engagement. They created conditions where individual ship captains could improvise effectively. The communication channels carried short, essential updates rather than detailed orders. Trust replaced control as their operating principle. The Zaharian formation broke under the relentless assault. Ships that had moved as one now reacted independently. Some accelerated into asteroid fields trying to evade attacks. Others fired at sensor ghosts created by Walsh's viruses. Their perfect coordination shattered into individual survival attempts. The rout began as their command network collapsed under the strain. When the engagement ended, 3 Zaharian ships drifted powerless amidst the asteroids. Their systems were overloaded or physically damaged beyond function. Several others showed significant combat damage and had withdrawn from the area. The Allied forces suffered minimal losses, mostly minor hull damage from close asteroid passes. The strategy had worked exactly as theorized. The mixed fleet regrouped beyond the asteroid field. Morrison received damage reports and casualty counts. The numbers showed overwhelming success against a force that should have defeated them easily. The Alteran commanders, initially skeptical, now viewed the human approach with new respect. They had witnessed chaos weaponized against perfection and seen which one prevailed. The Zaharian response came with their typical precision. Their fleet moved into attack formation with the same perfect coordination they'd shown in every engagement. Energy weapons charged in unison, shields activated simultaneously. They followed their established patterns exactly as predicted. Their discipline remained absolute even after the ambush. They fought the way they always fought, methodical, calculated, and predictable. Their command network began showing the first signs of strain immediately. Walsh's data viruses flooded their systems with conflicting information. Sensor readings showed phantom fleets where none existed. Damage reports indicated critical failures on perfectly functional ships. Coordination signals developed strange timing delays. The network that had given them such advantage now worked against them. Neural implants designed for perfect communication started failing under the chaos. Soldiers and pilots received contradictory orders simultaneously. Some units accelerated while others decelerated. Formation patterns developed gaps and misalignments. The perfect synchronization that defined their combat style began to unravel. Their strength became their vulnerability. Individual ships started operating independently as the network degraded. Some drifted without power as their crews struggled with system conflicts. Others disabled engines in confusion, becoming stationary targets. A few even fired on each other when targeting systems received false data. The coordinated war machine became a collection of confused individual units. The coalition forces recognized the opportunity immediately. They saw that victory wouldn't come from matching force with force. They needed to exploit the enemy's disrupted state. Their strategy shifted from direct engagement to systematic disruption. They targeted communication relays and command vessels rather than trying to destroy the entire fleet. Martinez coordinated the engineering response from her station. She identified the flagship's reactor design through pattern analysis. Its energy signature showed a vulnerability to physical impact rather than energy weapons. The design prioritized energy efficiency over structural reinforcement. This represented another example of their perfection creating weakness. She took command of a lightly armed transport vessel. The ship had been modified with additional armor plating during the refit. Its engines could deliver a short, powerful burst of acceleration. She plotted an approach vector that used drifting wreckage as cover. The course required precise timing and left no margin for error. The transport accelerated toward the flagship's reactor section. Its engines flared with maximum thrust. Zaharian point defense systems tracked the unusual approach but hesitated. The maneuver didn't match any known attack profile. Their adaptive systems couldn't categorize the threat quickly enough. The delay proved decisive. Impact occurred at precisely calculated coordinates. The transport's reinforced nose cone penetrated the reactor shielding. Breach alarms sounded across the flagship as containment failed. Emergency systems activated too late to prevent the cascade failure. The reactor went critical within seconds of the impact. The explosion lit up the entire battle zone. Energy waves radiated outward, disrupting systems across nearby vessels. The flagship's destruction created a chain reaction as adjacent ships lost coordination. The carefully organized fleet became a scattered collection of disoriented units. Their command structure collapsed completely, unconventional. Tactics had achieved what conventional warfare couldn't. The suicidal strike demonstrated that perfect defenses could be breached through unexpected methods. The coalition learned that sometimes the simplest, most direct approach worked against sophisticated opponents. Their willingness to embrace chaos had defeated perfect order. The fractured Zaharian command network created confusion across their entire fleet. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination now drifted without clear directives. Some vessels accelerated while others decelerated. Formation patterns developed dangerous gaps. The network that had been their greatest advantage now worked against them, delivering contradictory orders and false sensor data. Their disciplined warfare dissolved into chaos. Morrison's team executed their plan with precise timing. They modified several damaged ships to broadcast exaggerated distress signals and simulated system failures. The vessels drifted in apparent disarray, emitting energy signatures that suggested critical damage. Their movements mimicked uncontrolled drifting rather than tactical positioning. The feint was designed to look like a vulnerable target. The Zaharian forces took the bait. The remaining coordinated units moved toward what appeared to be easy targets. They approached with their standard attack formation, energy weapons charging in predictable sequences. Their response followed established patterns despite the network disruptions. They couldn't resist what looked like a clean victory opportunity. The true defense fleet waited concealed behind lunar orbits and asteroid shadows. These ships had avoided the earlier modifications, retaining their original systems and capabilities. They maintained communication silence, watching the approaching Zaharian forces through passive sensors. Their weapons remained powered down, their engines running at minimal output. They were the unanticipated counterstroke. As the Zaharian assault group committed to their attack run, the hidden forces activated. Energy weapons flared to life simultaneously across multiple vectors. Attack patterns emerged from unexpected directions, catching the enemy in crossfires they couldn't evade. The trap closed with brutal efficiency, turning hunters into prey within seconds. The annihilation was swift and comprehensive. Zaharian ships found themselves surrounded without escape routes. Their adaptive systems struggled against attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. Shield frequencies flickered as they tried to counter different weapon types at once. The coordinated assault broke their remaining cohesion completely. Admiral Zithol's flagship became the primary target. The massive command vessel attempted to reorganize the scattered forces, but its systems were already compromised. Neural feedback from the fractured network overloaded its command crew. Bridge officers collapsed at their stations, overwhelmed by conflicting sensory input. The ship's systems went into emergency shutdown, leaving it helpless against the finishing blows. Chaos continued to spread through the Zaharian ranks. Walsh's data viruses maintained constant pressure on their communications. False orders sent ships on collision courses with each other. Phantom sensor contacts drew fire away from real threats. The information warfare component proved as devastating as the physical attacks. Their ability to coordinate effectively was destroyed. The remaining Zaharian forces attempted to disengage, but their withdrawal patterns were predictable. The coalition forces anticipated their escape vectors and positioned interceptors accordingly. The battle became a systematic elimination rather than a contest. Resistance crumbled as more ships were disabled or destroyed. Surviving vessels began powering down their weapon systems voluntarily. Some emitted universal ceasefire signals, others simply drifted without attempting further combat operations. The fight had gone out of them once their command structure collapsed completely. Their perfect war machine had been broken by imperfect warfare. The coalition maintained their positions, watching for any signs of renewed aggression. Damage assessment teams began scanning disabled vessels for survivors. Medical ships moved toward damaged friendly craft. The transition from combat to containment happened with disciplined efficiency. They remained ready for counterattacks that never materialized. The first surrender signal came from Admiral Zithol's crippled flagship. Its communication arrays transmitted a simple message across all frequencies. The transmission contained no conditions or negotiations, just acknowledgement of defeat and request for terms. Other surviving ships quickly followed with identical messages. Morrison received the transmission on the Defiance's bridge. His crew watched the main display as enemy ships powered down their weapons completely. The change was both sudden and absolute. The Zaharian Empire had faced an opponent it couldn't adapt to, and chosen surrender over continued losses. The war had reached its turning point. The surrender changed everything. Earth's alliance with the Alteran Republic transformed from a desperate military pact into a formal diplomatic partnership. The Galactic Council, which had watched the conflict from a distance, extended an invitation. Humanity entered the interstellar community not as curious newcomers, but as proven strategic partners. Their seat at the table came with immediate respect rather than probationary status. They had earned their place through action, not diplomacy. The transition created underlying tensions beneath the surface celebrations. Some council members viewed humanity's methods with concern. Their chaotic approach to warfare challenged centuries of established military doctrine. Traditionalists argued that embracing such unpredictability could destabilize galactic security norms. Others saw the practical results and recognized that old rules might need updating. The debate would continue long after the victory celebrations ended. The conflict demonstrated a hard truth about civilizations shaped by adversity. Planets with perfect environments produced stable societies but limited adaptability. Worlds with constant challenges forged resilience and creative problem-solving. Earth's volatile history had created a species that could thrive in chaos. Their ability to improvise under pressure became their greatest strategic asset. This Death World heritage gave them tools that more advanced civilizations lacked. Alteran military analysts studied the campaign with professional curiosity. They acknowledged that their own perfect formations had become predictable. Their disciplined tactics created patterns that adaptive enemies could exploit. They began incorporating human-style unpredictability into their training programs. The lesson was clear. Sometimes you must fight like you have nothing left to lose, even when you have everything to protect. Humanity's approach blended compassion with ruthless efficiency. They helped because it was right, but fought without restraint when necessary. This combination of moral clarity and tactical flexibility became their signature strategy. Other species began studying Earth's military history for insights into unconventional warfare. The concept of humane unorthodoxy entered galactic strategic discussions as a valid approach to conflict resolution. Morrison watched the political developments from the Defiance's observation deck. He thought about Earth's long struggle for survival against natural disasters, pandemics, and internal conflicts. His world had never asked permission to exist or expand. It simply persisted through constant adaptation. This mindset, born from environmental necessity, had proven valuable on an interstellar scale. Their comfort with uncertainty became their advantage. The Alliance faced practical challenges in integrating different military philosophies. Joint training exercises exposed cultural differences in risk assessment and decision-making. Human officers made quick judgment calls while Alteran commanders preferred detailed analysis. Both approaches had strengths, but combining them required mutual understanding and respect. The process involved more than tactical coordination. It demanded philosophical alignment. Earth's technological development reflected their practical mindset. They favored robust systems over elegant ones, simplicity over complexity. Their engineers designed equipment that could function with minimal maintenance under adverse conditions. This approach complemented Alteran precision technology perfectly. Together they created systems that were both sophisticated and resilient. The galactic balance of power shifted subtly but permanently. Humanity's demonstrated capacity for creative warfare made them valuable allies and dangerous opponents. Their willingness to help others without demanding compensation built trust among neutral species. Their reputation grew as both protectors and innovators. They became the wild card in galactic politics. The victory over the Zaharians proved that Deathworld resilience could outperform Garden World perfection. Environmental challenges created mental flexibility that no amount of technological advancement could replicate. Earth's turbulent history had forged a species that could handle uncertainty better than any planned civilization. Their greatest weakness became their most valuable strength. The Alliance promised new opportunities for mutual growth. Alteran stability could anchor human innovation, while human adaptability could protect Alteran traditions. Together they represented a balanced approach to galactic challenges. The partnership would face future threats with combined strengths that neither possessed alone. Earth's entry into the galactic community marked the beginning of a new era in interstellar relations. Earth's violent history equipped humanity with tools no Garden World could replicate. Their survival depended on adapting to constant, unpredictable threats. This forged a mindset that embraced chaos rather than fearing it. Where other species sought perfect order, humans learned to thrive amid disorder. Their greatest strength wasn't technology or numbers. It was mental flexibility born from environmental pressure. They turned chaos into tactical advantage. Faced with an enemy that adapted to every conventional strategy, they responded with deliberate unpredictability. Their attacks followed no logical patterns. Their defenses used simple, robust systems instead of complex technology. They weaponized confusion against an opponent that demanded perfect information. This approach shattered the enemy's centralized command structure. Improvisation became their path to victory. Human commanders trusted junior officers to make rapid decisions based on changing conditions. Their ships moved in erratic patterns that defied targeting systems. Their weapons created saturation effects rather than precision strikes. They fought with a freedom that more disciplined forces couldn't match. This flexibility proved devastating against rigid opposition. Earth's stance emerged as intentionally disruptive. They didn't seek to preserve existing galactic norms or follow traditional warfare doctrines. They introduced concepts that challenged centuries of strategic thinking. Their methods were sometimes crude, often unpredictable, but consistently effective. They reminded the galaxy that sometimes survival requires breaking rules rather than following them. Humanity redefined what it meant to be a force for good. They helped not because of political calculation, but because help was needed. Their compassion was matched by ruthless efficiency when necessary. They demonstrated that strength could serve protection rather than conquest. Their actions showed that advanced civilizations could still learn from newcomers. They became more than just another species in the galactic community. Their approach offered a new template for handling existential threats. Other civilizations began studying human history and conflict resolution methods. The concept of controlled chaos entered strategic discussions across multiple species. Earth's methods became subjects of intense analysis and debate. This new warfare embraced risk as a necessary component. Human commanders accepted higher casualty rates in exchange for strategic flexibility. They learned faster from failures because they expected them. Their systems were designed to function under damaged conditions. This resilience proved more valuable than perfect performance. They refused to be constrained by old rules or traditions. Their tactics often violated established conventions of engagement. They used psychological operations alongside physical attacks. They targeted enemy morale as aggressively as their ships. This comprehensive approach overwhelmed opponents who expected purely military solutions. Earth's response to the Valeth plea became a catalyst for galactic change. Their intervention demonstrated that established powers could learn from newcomers. The victory showed that diversity of thought could defeat homogeneous perfection. Their methods inspired other species to reconsider their own approaches to conflict and cooperation. The galaxy began learning to manage crises in new ways. Alliances formed across traditional cultural boundaries. Military doctrines incorporated more flexibility and improvisation. The concept of Death World resilience entered political discussions. Civilizations started valuing adaptive capacity alongside technological advancement. Future threats would be met with this new understanding. The galaxy recognized that perfect systems could have perfect vulnerabilities. Sometimes the best defense was introducing controlled chaos. The alliance between human adaptability and Alteran stability created a balanced approach to security. The resolution wasn't just a military victory but a philosophical shift. Civilizations learned to value different strengths and perspectives. They began building alliances that combined stability with flexibility. The galaxy started managing crises through cooperation rather than isolation. Earth's Death World heritage had given them something precious to share. The victory brought peace but not answers. Deep space remains largely uncharted, its vastness concealing threats nobody has imagined yet. The Zaharians came from one direction, but space has infinite directions. Unknown regions could hold civilizations far more advanced or fundamentally alien. The galaxy's quiet zones might be silent for terrible reasons. Exploration continues with renewed caution rather than celebration. The Deep Space Protocol's activation sent ripples across dimensions nobody fully understands. That signal traveled farther than anyone planned or predicted. Something else might have heard it besides humanity. The protocol was designed for desperation, not discretion. Its ancient technology might have drawn attention from forces that don't appreciate interstellar disturbances. The call for help could become an invitation to something worse. Humanity's demonstrated capabilities make them both valuable and vulnerable. Their Death World resilience gives them unique strengths, but also marks them as potential threats. Other civilizations might see their chaotic methods as dangerous rather than innovative. Their willingness to break rules could be interpreted as aggression rather than creativity. They become the galaxy's wild card. And not everyone appreciates unpredictability. The alliance with the Alterans represents a new model for interstellar cooperation. Their combined strengths cover each other's weaknesses perfectly. But this partnership remains untested against truly existential threats. Facing something beyond the Zaharian threat would strain their cultural differences. Their ability to coordinate under extreme pressure remains theoretical until tested again. The next crisis will determine if this alliance can withstand real pressure. The Zaharian surrender contains troubling aspects. Their forces withdrew but didn't disintegrate. Their home systems remain untouched and their industrial capacity intact. This looks less like total defeat and more like strategic withdrawal. They've demonstrated incredible adaptive capabilities before. A smarter, more dangerous version of their threat could emerge after analyzing this defeat. Wars sometimes have intervals rather than endings. New technologies need development based on lessons learned. The strategy of controlled chaos requires better implementation methods. Their current systems were improvisations rather than refined solutions. The Alliance must create weapons that harness unpredictability without sacrificing reliability. They need communication systems that function amid electronic warfare. Every victory reveals new requirements for the next conflict. The galaxy now understands humanity's capabilities and methods. Other civilizations have watched their chaotic approach to warfare. Potential enemies will study their tactics and develop countermeasures. Their advantage of surprise won't last forever. They must evolve their strategies while others are still reacting to their current methods. Standing still means becoming predictable. The political landscape has shifted permanently. Humanity's intervention changed power balances across multiple systems. Traditional powers must accommodate this new variable in their calculations. Some will seek alliances while others prepare defenses. The galactic community faces reorganization around this new reality. Stability won't return quickly or smoothly. Economic considerations emerge from the conflict's aftermath. Reconstruction requires resources and coordination across cultural boundaries. Trade routes need resecuring against potential remnants of Zaharian forces. New technologies developed during the war could revolutionize interstellar commerce. The economic implications will shape politics for generations. The psychological impact matters as much as the physical reconstruction. Civilizations that lived under threat must recover their confidence. Populations that witnessed unimaginable destruction need time to heal. The galaxy must process what happened and why. Recovery involves more than rebuilding structures. It requires restoring hope. The journey has only begun. This victory solved one problem but revealed many others. Each answered question creates new uncertainties. The galaxy remains full of dangers seen and unseen. Peace feels fragile when you know how quickly it can shatter. What comes next will test everything they've learned. The real work starts now. Earth's violent environment created a survivor's mindset. Their chaotic history forged unique problem-solving abilities. When the galaxy faced an adaptive enemy, humanity's comfort with unpredictability became decisive. Their methods broke patterns others considered unbreakable. The alliance with the Alterans combined stability with flexibility. It represents a new model for galactic cooperation. Different strengths complement each other perfectly. The lesson remains clear after the victory. Preservation sometimes requires abandoning convention. Civilization's defense may demand unconventional thinking. The ability to adapt under pressure can outweigh technological superiority. Survival favors those who embrace necessary chaos.